History remembers these men for fire and steel. Cities burned, armies shattered, empires carved out of fear. But in the quiet hours between wars, something unexpected surfaced. Behind the armor, each conqueror carried a strange obsession, a hobby that revealed the human cracks beneath the crown. Alexander argued philosophy by lamplight. Timur played endless games of chess. Nero chased applause like oxygen. Genghis Khan hunted across the steppe to feel free again. Qin Shi Huang searched for eternal life itself. If you pause the story right here, a simple truth appears. Even the most ruthless rulers needed something to escape into. Tonight, we step away from their battles and into the hidden habits that shaped them, soothed them, and exposed the men they truly were. This is the secret private world of history's greatest conquerors. Number 10. Alexander the Great, the midnight debater. He conquered faster than any man in history, yet Alexander the Great spent more nights chasing ideas than enemies. When the campfires dimmed and his generals finally slept, Alexander lit a small oil lamp, opened a stack of worn scrolls, and turned the battlefield into a classroom. If you pause the story here, you can almost see it. A young king surrounded not by maps of Persia, but by books. His strangest hobby wasn't drinking, hunting, or feasting. It was arguing about fate, courage, the soul, the purpose of power. This habit began in childhood, when Aristotle filled his mind with questions instead of answers, and long after he became king, Alexander carried that habit like armor. On campaigns, he hauled annotated scrolls for thousands of miles. He wrote in the margins. He debated officers until dawn. Sometimes, he even stopped entire marches just to ask philosophers a question he couldn't shake. To his men, this was confusing. To Alexander, it was oxygen. These debates weren't entertainment. They were the one place he didn't have to be a conqueror. In those dim hours, he wasn't the master of the world. He was simply a curious student wrestling with destiny. And ironically, these quiet moments shaped his empire more than most battles. They sharpened his ambition. They fed his belief that he had a divine purpose. They pushed him to cross deserts and climb mountains. Most armies feared. But there was something darker beneath it too. Every time he argued about glory and fate, he was trying to justify the brutal path he walked. He needed to believe the world he was carving had meaning, or that his victories were part of something bigger than conquest. In the end, Alexander's strangest hobby reveals a truth many forget. He wasn't running from enemies, he was running from doubt. And while he sought answers in philosophy, another conqueror sought answers on a board of carved pieces, trying to predict the world like a game. Number 9. Timur Tamerlane, the chessboard war master. He was the man who turned Central Asia into a furnace, cities leveled, kingdoms erased, armies broken by a mind that never stopped calculating. But Timur's most revealing obsession wasn't found on the battlefield. It sat quietly on a wooden board. Chess. If you pause the story here, you can picture him perfectly, the most feared warlord of his age, leaning over tiny carved pieces, studying every angle with the same intensity he used to crush empires. Timur didn't play chess for fun. He played it the way he lived, to dominate. He forced generals to play for hours, sometimes days, refusing to let anyone leave until he had mapped every mistake. These matches weren't games. They were laboratories. Each move was a battle. Each loss a lesson. Each victory a prophecy of the destruction he would later unleash on real kingdoms. His soldiers said he could look at a board and see entire campaigns unfolding, ambushes, retreats, feints, annihilations. His opponents said playing against him felt like standing on the wrong side of a siege wall. But this obsession had a deeper purpose. Timur's body was broken from old wounds, a crushed leg, constant pain, the limp that gave him the name Timur the Lame. Chess became the one place where his physical weakness didn't matter. On the board, he was unstoppable. On the board, he was whole. On the board, he could rewrite the world exactly as he wanted it. And psychologically, it fed something darker. The belief that life and death were simply pieces waiting to be moved. This mindset shaped everything he did. He planned invasions like openings. He crushed rebellions like endgames. He saw kings as pawns and cities as squares to be claimed. In the end, Timur's strangest hobby wasn't strange at all. It was a mirror, showing a man who believed that the world could be mastered if he calculated hard enough. But while Timur escaped into strategy, another ruler escaped into control, not of armies, but of every object within reach. Number 8. Augustus, the compulsive organizer. He built the Roman Empire out of chaos, civil wars, assassinations, riots, and the ashes of a collapsing republic. Yet in private, Augustus battled a very different enemy, disorder, not in Rome, but in himself. If you pause the story here, imagine the most powerful man in the world, bending down to adjust a scroll that's slightly crooked. That was Augustus. His strangest hobby was microscopic order, rearranging documents, straightening furniture, cleaning his writing tools, and organizing everything from wax tablets to personal letters with military precision. If a servant moved a cup an inch, Augustus noticed. If a cloak hung unevenly, he fixed it. Some said he did it to calm his nerves. Others believed it helped him think. But the truth was simpler and much more human. Augustus couldn't control Rome unless he first controlled his own world. This obsession began long before he became emperor. As a young man surrounded by betrayal and shifting alliances, order became his shield. Every neatly stacked scroll, every arranged table, every polished stylus gave him a moment of stability in a life where nothing felt safe. After seizing power, the habit only intensified. In the palace, Augustus sometimes paused crucial decisions just to straighten objects on a desk. During long meetings, he would absent-mindedly align cups, plates, and tablets into perfect lines while discussing matters of state. To outsiders, it looked trivial. To Augustus, it was survival. Because beneath his calm face lived a constant tension, the fear that everything he built could collapse as quickly as the Republic had. His hobby was not a quirk, it was a coping mechanism, a way to quiet the chaos he had inherited, a way to breathe. And in those moments of silence, when everything in the room sat in perfect order, he felt, if only briefly, that he had tamed the world. But while Augustus sought peace through control, another emperor demanded something entirely different from the world: applause. Number 7. Nero, the emperor who craved applause. Rome feared him. Legions obeyed him. Senators bowed the moment he entered a room. Yet Nero wanted none of it. Not really. The thing he craved most wasn't power. It was applause. If you pause the story here, imagine the ruler of the world standing on a stage, trembling not from battle, but from stage fright. Nero's strangest hobby was performing singing, acting, playing the lyre, reciting poems he believed would outlive empires. And he didn't perform in private, he made Rome watch. Night after night, he staged long performances that stretched for hours, trapping the empire's elite in a theater where leaving was considered treason. To Nero, conquest didn't matter. But clapping hands did. When he performed, something changed. The insecurity, the paranoia, the fear of plots, all of it faded. On stage, he wasn't an emperor crushed by expectations. He was an artist who wanted to be adored, and he forced the empire to give him that adoration. Senators fainted from exhaustion, but kept clapping. Soldiers guarded the exits to prevent the audience from escaping. Nobles whispered that Nero valued applause more than loyalty. And they were right. Because performing wasn't a hobby. It was his identity. It gave him control over something he understood: emotion. And in those rare moments of applause, Nero felt seen, truly seen in a way political power never gave him. But there was a darker truth behind it. The louder the applause, the more he feared silence. The more he performed, the more he doubted himself. And slowly, he blurred the line between emperor and entertainer until Rome could no longer tell the difference. By the end of his reign, Nero wasn't ruling an empire. He was starring in a tragedy he wrote for himself. And while Nero drowned in applause, another conqueror drowned himself in control, down to the last thread and button. Number 6. Napoleon Bonaparte, the fashion micromanager. He commanded Europe with unmatched speed and brilliance. But Napoleon Bonaparte carried an obsession far smaller than the kingdoms he conquered. Clothing. Not fashion as luxury, but fashion as precision. Every seam, every button, every glove, every boot mattered. If you pause the story here, picture Napoleon leaning over a tailor's table, inspecting a thread so closely it might as well have been a battle map. His generals feared his fury on the battlefield. Tailors feared his fury over a crooked stitch. Napoleon's strangest hobby was micromanaging the exact details of his uniforms and the uniforms of everyone around him. He designed the cut of coats to shape morale. He demanded gloves measured down to the millimeter. He ordered boots with rigid angles because he believed posture influenced confidence. This wasn't vanity. It was strategy. Napoleon believed every soldier's appearance affected discipline, psychology, and even destiny. To him, a wrinkle was a weakness, a loose button was a warning sign. An untidy officer signaled a future failure, so he inspected uniforms with the same intensity he used to inspect artillery lines. This obsession followed him everywhere. During campaigns, he carried spare gloves the way others carried pistols. During meetings, he adjusted collars and pulled at sleeves. During moments of stress, he straightened his own coat again and again, as if order in clothing could restore order in the world. And in a way, it did. Because underneath the ambition, Napoleon feared losing control. He feared uncertainty. He feared the chaos that had torn France apart before he rose to power. Uniforms became his refuge, a place where every thread obeyed him. But while Napoleon tried to control the world through fabric, another conqueror tried to control it through something much more tangible, the glittering trophies of his victories. Number 5. Nader Shah, the jewel predators. But while he guarded his treasures like a dragon, another conqueror sought treasure of a different kind, the freedom of the hunt. He was called the Sword of Persia, a man whose conquests left cities trembling and thrones collapsing. But Nader Shah carried a hunger far stranger than victory. He hunted jewels, not as wealth, but as trophies, proof of domination, symbols of the world bowing before him. If you pause the story here, imagine a warlord holding a gemstone to the light, admiring it not for its beauty, but for the empire it came from. Nader's strangest hobby was collecting legendary stones with an obsession that bordered on madness. He tracked rumors the way hunters track footsteps. He interrogated merchants, bribed jewelers, and demanded kings surrender their treasures as signs of submission. The Koh-i-Noor, the Dari-i-Noor, the Peacock Throne. He wanted them all. When he sacked Delhi in 1739, it wasn't the gold or the palaces that thrilled him. It was the gems, the sparkling proof that he had broken a mighty empire. He piled them high, examined them by torchlight, and arranged them like trophies in a private sanctuary where only his closest men could enter. This wasn't greed. It was a ritual. Each jewel represented a victory made eternal, a life he had taken, a kingdom he had crushed. A reminder that no ruler, no matter how powerful, could keep what Nader wanted. But beneath the brilliance of his collection was something darker: insecurity. Nader had risen from nothing, a poor shepherd's son who clawed his way into royalty through war. Collecting jewels wasn't about wealth. It was about proving, again and again, that he belonged on a throne built from fear. And as his mind grew more unstable, His obsession deepened. He hid jewels from his own generals. He accused allies of stealing treasures they had never touched. He trusted no one except the stones that could not betray him. In the end, Nader Shah didn't collect gems. He collected symbols of the enemies he had crushed. But while he guarded his treasures like a dragon, another conqueror sought treasure of a different kind, the freedom of the hunt. Number 4. Genghis Khan, the steppe hunter Khan. He ruled the largest land empire the world has ever seen, a storm on horseback that reshaped continents. But Genghis Khan's most intimate obsession had nothing to do with thrones or war. It was the hunt. Not for conquest, not for sport, but for silence. For the feeling of being a simple rider again. If you pause the story here, picture Genghis astride a horse at dawn, frost in the air, bow in hand. Not as an emperor, but as a man reaching for the peace he lost long before the world knew his name. His strangest hobby was the Noyon hunts, massive imperial hunting circles where thousands of riders formed miles-long rings, slowly tightening around wild animals. It took days, sometimes weeks, and the entire Mongol court participated. But for Genghis, these hunts weren't entertainment. They were a return to the boy who grew up starving on the steppe, a return to the life where survival meant skill, not armies, a return to the freedom of riding fast with nothing to command except the wind. During hunts, he didn't dress like a Khan. He didn't speak like a ruler. He rode, tracked, and shot like any other warrior. The empire disappeared behind him. The weight of rule melted into the rhythm of hooves, and for a few precious days, he felt human again. But there was another layer to it, one darker, more controlled. The hunts were also training grounds, exercises in discipline, a reminder to his soldiers that unity won battles as much as courage. Still, the deeper truth remains. Genghis wasn't escaping into bloodshed. He was escaping into memory. The hunt gave him something power never could, the illusion that he had not lost himself somewhere along the path to empire. But while Genghis rode toward the past, another emperor rode toward the impossible, the dream of defeating death itself. Number 3. Qin Shi Huang, the immortality seeker. He unified China with iron discipline. Roads, laws, walls, armies, all bending to his will. But beneath the armor of the first emperor lived a fear so deep it shaped every year of his reign. Qin Shi Huang was terrified of death. And his strangest hobby, his obsession, was hunting immortality. If you pause the story here, picture the most powerful man in Asia staring at a tiny vial of shimmering liquid, convinced it could save him from time itself. His days were filled with maps and ministers. His nights were filled with alchemists, legends, and whispered promises. Qin Shi Huang collected elixirs the way others collected weapons, powders, metals, potions, strange mixtures brought by mystics who claimed they could preserve youth. He devoured every myth he could find about magical islands, divine springs, and hidden realms where immortals lived untouched by aging. He didn't just study these stories. He acted on them. He sent massive expeditions to search for mythical islands like Penglai, ships filled with scholars, sailors, and children chosen for purity. Some never returned. Others returned with nothing but stories, but he kept searching, desperate for anything that could silence the ticking clock inside his mind. And in the ultimate twist of fate, the very elixirs he consumed to preserve his life were slowly poisoning him, many filled with mercury, believing it purified the spirit. To his enemies, it looked like paranoia. To historians, it looks like delusion. But emotionally, it was something more basic. Qin Shi Huang didn't fear his enemies. He feared the end of himself. All the walls he built, all the armies he commanded, all the reforms he created, none could stop the truth that terrified him most. Every empire ends, and so does every man who builds it. His immortality obsession was not madness. It was loneliness, the kind only absolute power can create. But while Qin Shi Huang fought time, another conqueror fought something much simpler, the pull of his own roots. Number 2. Attila, the Hun, the rustic king. He terrified Rome. He shattered empires. He commanded armies so vast they looked like storms rolling across the plains. But Attila the Hun, the scourge of God, lived a private life so shockingly simple that even his allies were confused by it. If you pause the story here, imagine a man feared across continents, sitting beside a small campfire, drinking from a plain wooden cup, while gold and silver treasures lie untouched nearby. That was Attila. His strangest hobby was refusing luxury, embracing the humble, rustic life of a nomadic rider, even when he ruled like a king. While foreign envoys expected to find jewels and marble halls, Attila greeted them in a tent furnished with nothing more than rugs, hides, and simple wooden bowls. And he preferred it that way. He loved evenings where warriors shared old steppe songs. He enjoyed quiet storytelling more than feasts. He rode alone at dawn to feel the wind cut across the plains, the same way he had before he commanded nations. For Attila, simplicity wasn't a habit. It was identity. He believed luxury softened men. He believed wealth corrupted the spirit. He believed a conqueror should remain tied to the earth he came from. And there was fear hidden in that belief. Not fear of enemies, but fear of losing himself. Every time he chose a wooden cup over a golden chalice, he was protecting the one thing he valued more than victory: the life of a rider, not a ruler. While Rome drowned in extravagance, Attila stayed loyal to the harsh open world that shaped him. Even at the height of his power, he could sit quietly in a tent listening to simple melodies, while diplomats outside whispered about the unimaginable wealth he ignored. Because for Attila, peace wasn't found in gold. It was found in staying the man he always was. But while Attila held tightly to simplicity, another ruler clung desperately to something darker: the fear that lived inside his own shadow. Number 1. Ivan the Terrible, the collector of men's souls. He ruled Russia with fire and suspicion, a man whose rage could ignite entire cities. But Ivan IV, known as the Terrible, carried a private obsession far more disturbing than his public violence. He collected memories of the people he destroyed. If you pause the story here, imagine the most feared ruler in Russia, sitting alone in a dim chamber, hunched over pages of names, not allies, not victories, but the men he had executed. Ivan's strangest hobby was cataloging his enemies, not just noting them, documenting them. He kept meticulous lists of nobles, rivals, servants, and supposed conspirators who fell to his rage. He reread these lists constantly, adding notes, writing comments, and convincing himself that each death was justified. To him, these pages were not records. They were reassurance. Every name crossed out was a threat removed. Every scribbled note was a reminder that he was still in control. Every list was a shield against the paranoia consuming him from within. And this ritual only grew stronger as he aged. While Russia expanded, Ivan spent more time alone with his lists, muttering prayers, clutching relics, and replaying old betrayals. He surrounded himself with monks, prophets, and icons, begging for signs that he'd made the right choices, even when he knew he hadn't. Ivan's free time became a cycle of fear. Pray, record, reread, accuse, repeat. To outsiders, it looked like madness. To Ivan, it was survival, a desperate attempt to make sense of a world he believed was always conspiring against him. And maybe that's the most revealing truth of all. Ivan didn't control Russia. He tried to control the fear inside himself. But where Ivan drowned in paranoia, the story of these 10 conquerors reveals something deeper, hiding beneath all their obsessions: something universal, something painfully human. They ruled through fire, strategy, fear, and brilliance. Their victories shaped continents, and their names survived centuries. Yet when the battles ended and the armies slept, each conqueror retreated into something small, something strangely human. Alexander debated ideas to escape doubt. Timur mastered chess to feel in control. Augustus arranged objects to calm the chaos. Nero chased applause to fill a hollow heart. Napoleon perfected uniforms to command certainty. Nader Shah collected jewels to prove he belonged on a throne. Genghis hunted to remember who he used to be. Qin Shi Huang searched for immortality to silence fear. Attila embraced simplicity to stay true to himself. Ivan clung to lists to hold back paranoia. Different obsessions. Different worlds. But one truth. Power never erased their humanity. It exposed it. These strange hobbies were not distractions. They were windows. Windows into the quiet, vulnerable moments of men's history, often paints as monsters or gods. And in those hidden habits, we see the one thing they all spent their lives trying to hide. Behind every conqueror, there is simply a man trying to outrun his own shadow.